Hi everyone, this is Marianne Marlowe with A Word Fitly Spoken Ministries here to bring you a Word Bites again today. And today the title of our message is No Ifs, Ands, or Buts. And we're going to read today from Numbers 13:28. But before we go to that verse, I want to talk a little bit about what happened before this verse in the Bible so that we can have a little background and context for this verse. So, the Lord in Numbers 13:1 told Moses to send out men to explore the land of Canaan and to see with their own eyes if it was really like God had described it. He told Moses to send one man from each tribe, so 12 men, and each was a leader in his tribe. In verse 18, Moses tells these leaders to see what the land is like, to find out if the people are weak or strong, to see if the land is good or bad. Are the cities protected or not? Is the soil fertile and are there many trees? So the men went and explored the land for 40 days. Then they came back with their report. And the report that these 12 leaders brought back to Moses and the people that we can see in verses 27 and 28. Verse 27 says, "We came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, as God had said. And this is the fruit of it." So the fruit they brought back was a huge cluster of grapes, so big and so heavy that they suspended it on a pole, and 2 men had to carry it, plus a sample of pomegranates and figs, which were also plentiful in the land. So after exploring the land for 40 days, almost a month and a half, and bringing back evidence of the bountiful fruit of the land, they find that the land is just as God had said it would be, a land flowing with milk and honey. So let's take a look for a moment at this phrase, flowing with milk and honey. It's used a few times in the Bible about the promised land. How would the Israelites have viewed this phrase? The word flowing is the Hebrew word zub, and it means to flow freely, to overflow, to gush. It would have brought to mind abundance and plenty. The word milk would have pointed to a fertile and green land where their sheep and cattle could have grazed and been at ease, therefore producing much milk, which is bounty for people of that day. The word honey, could be the honey could have been from bees or figs or other fruit. Excuse me. Bees or figs or other fruit of the land. And that would have meant that there would have been a plentiful amount of that fruit, because it would have taken a lot of fruit to make honey, or a lot of bees to make the honey also. So, according to these 12 leaders, the land was as God described it to be, very fertile and very good. And then we come to verse 28, and the first word of verse 28 ruins everything. They said, "Yes, it is a great land, flowing with everything good, just as God said it was. Nevertheless," that's the first word of verse 28. And this word means ends, no, none, less than nothing. So, in other words, they brought to nothingness everything they had just said about the land. And more importantly, everything God had said about it with one word. So basically, with that one word, nevertheless, they caused fear, unbelief, and rebellion to rise up in the hearts of all the people except Moses, Joshua, and Caleb. And that whole generation missed out on going into and possessing the promised land that flowed with milk and honey. They stayed out in the desert for 40 more years because of that one word. How many times do we miss out on God's best for us because of this word or similar words? Words like if, and, or but. I know God says in His Word that Jesus brought healing for me on the cross, but, and we can add any number of phrases behind that word but, like the doctors don't give me any hope, or I've been sick for so long, right? I know it says in the Word I'm supposed to have all my needs met and have plenty left over to share with others, if only. And we can add phrases to that like, I didn't have to fix my car, or if only I didn't lose my job. God is bigger than those things. I know the Word says when I submit myself to God and resist the devil, he will flee from me. However, and we can add things like, he's so much stronger than me, or how can I fight something I can't see? So many times we wonder, we struggle, and we wonder why we struggle to receive all the things that God has promised to us. And it's because we're letting the Word nevertheless negate what God has told us in His Word. We're allowing circumstances and things that we see and hear and feel to take us away from believing and acting on what God has told us is true. Yes, there were giants in the land, but if they had remembered what God did to get them this far, then they would have known that they could trust God. I mean, look at all the wonders and signs and miracles God did up to that point, and yet they still wouldn't believe that He'd deliver them from their giants. Yes, there may be giants in your life, but all you have to do is look back and see where God brought you from to this date and all the wonderful things He did for you in the past. Do we think anything is impossible for God? Or maybe we think that He might not do it for us, or He might not do it this time. Well, that's a lack of faith and trust in God. God is consistent, and if He says He will do something, or He says you can have something in His Word, He'll do it, and you can have it. Amen? If God says you can have it, you can. If He says you can do it, you can. Excuse me. But God doesn't do anything apart from your faith and your obedience. Don't let those ifs, ands, or buts stop you from receiving or taking all that God has for you. In fact, I would make a commitment to remove those doubting and unbelieving words completely from my vocabulary altogether. I would never say those words again, because all that is not trusting in God and His Word. Amen? So go forth today and be like Joshua and Caleb and say, if God says we can have it, we can. Let's go take it right now. And never use that word nevertheless, or if, and, or but again. Bye for now.